Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Middlebrook Elementary School, Boothill Elementary School Roof Building Committee. I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:32. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with truth and justice for all. Okay, Barbara Crandall, would you please call the roll?
Chris Bandici,
Here.
Pat Borgeson,
Here.
Steve Cahill, Joy Cologne, Joanne Glasser Orenstein,
Here.
Lynn Salta,
Here.
Tony Sinto,
Here.
and Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Ward indicated they were unable to attend.
Okay,
Mr. Ward is on the guest list as an attendee.
What does that mean, Joanne, that he didn't
He's
log
not a
in?
part of- Oh, there he is. He's
Right
here.
Okay. All right, excellent. Okay, so the first order of business would be the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was July 13th.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
Aye.
Ward.
Second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ben. Is it Bandecki or Bandici?
Bandecki, thank you.
Bandecki. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. The financial report for the Middlebrook Elementary School roof project was included in your packet, and it is the same as last month. And the
Excuse-
balance is, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, I'm sorry, you had a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes. I don't know
Thank
if you
you.
voted.
We didn't have a vote.
Right, thank you. Could we accept them by unanimous consent? Okay, okay, thank you. And thank you, Barbara.
Mm.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, the financial report for the Middlebrook Elementary School roof replacement project was included in your packet. It has not changed since last month, and the balance available remains $1,597,932.54. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, thank you. Dave Cody, would you update us about the submission of our information on them to the state regarding the Middlebrook Elementary School roof?
Well, I wish I could give you all the facts, but I only know a few. I had submitted the grant application, as everyone knows, back in May. We waited several months for a response from the state. Hearing none, I finally reached out the end of July to some folks up there, Tom Rio, and as well as I got the name of, or the number from Michelle Dixon, who kind of handles more of the grants for the OSCGNR. And she told me on the phone that we didn't need to reapply for the grant, that we just needed to send in a new form EDO 49R, which is just a revised estimate of the costs. That's contrary to what we were told back in, I can't even remember at this point if it was February or March. So I sent her the form at the beginning of August. I sent her an email probably the middle of August asking if everything was okay. No response. I left a phone message, no response. On Monday, she wrote and said she didn't forget us, that the letter will be coming. And then about 3 hours later, she wrote another email saying, this is the form that I need. So I was a little confused, and I did call her. and spoke with her yesterday. And she asked me to resend the 049R, which I did. And I left a phone message today. I have not heard a response from her. It appears to me that we've given her all the information that she needs. So hopefully we'll hear from her soon, and I'll probably be calling her every day until we do. That's about the best I can update the committee. I'm sorry.
Wow. Okay, well, first of all, I want to commend you for reaching out and finding her and realizing maybe we just needed one form rather than a thick application.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll be seeing something on this soon.
David,
Yes.
is Dave still it? The most important thing, David, how was the wedding?
Exactly.
Everybody in the state of Connecticut, but how was your wedding?
The wedding was wonderful. Thank you all. It was a beautiful day, beautiful venue. The mass, the church was beautiful. I mean, just everything was just wonderful. Thank you so much. For
Congratulations, very nice.
Congratulations.
she's in the French Polynesia today already. So
Wow.
life is tough, huh?
Yeah, very nice.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you again.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dave, and we'll stay tuned, obviously. Our next item on the agenda, we all received a report, which we initially couldn't open, and then we received an updated version, which we could open on the Boothill Elementary School roof. And I believe Paul Lisi is here to help us move through this report. Paul, are you here?
I did have an email exchange with Paul on Wednesday, and he said that he had COVID. So
Yes.
I'm not sure if I know he knew about the meeting, but
He just texted me and said he's on the meeting. Bill Chin, is he in the audience perhaps?
He is in the audience. He's a guest.
Okay. Yes, he told me that he did have COVID and he was happy the meeting was on Zoom. So
Okay, he's coming in now.
I see him.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Paul.
Okay,
Thank
hello,
you.
everyone.
Hi. Thank you for the report,
You're welcome.
the one we could all read.
Everyone, hopefully everyone was able to open it. Okay.
Yes,
So would you like me to go ahead and go through it briefly?
yes, I believe we would.
Okay, so I'll share my screen if I could. I have that, let's see here. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Okay, so you should see the cover sheet.
yes, we see the cover sheet.
All right, so I'll run through this briefly just to summarize how we prepared this report. Back on, I believe it was June 28th, my team went out to the school, spent a greater part of the day on the roof, did a lot of investigation. I was there for part of the morning. So I'll just take you through what we have here. So this is still a draft. I want to emphasize that. It's a work in progress. We have our table of contents. We have some use and restrictions. You know, we're limited to the exploration that we did. We didn't, you know, take the entire school apart. We did limited exploratory work. We did do some test cuts in the roofing itself, but we didn't go beyond that. And you know, we only did limited test cuts. Obviously, we didn't tear up the entire roof. So there's limitations on the extent of exploratory work that we've done. But this is fairly standard procedure. Here, we have a summary, just again, identifying that this is limited to the roofing system. And how we approached it. There will be, I will be showing you a drawing that was not yet part of this report. At the end here, what's referred to as a tapered plan. And then the next step is we will put together a cost estimate. So that also is not yet part of this report. Just my contact information, and then general information on the building. So again, this is a work in progress. I see actually there's a typo here, that the roof area. No, actually, this is correct. 54,000 square feet. Yeah, and the floor area is 50,000. So obviously, the roof area is a little bit larger. So here's the entire roof. We'll get into the specifics of this, but you can see from this image alone that this is an older roof that hasn't been replaced in quite some time. This is an addition, a newer addition. These areas, I believe, were replaced in the early 90s, the roofing. Okay. So moving on. So we created a key plan to identify each of the roof areas from R1 all the way to R16, just so when we are referring throughout the project, when we're referring to these areas, we could clearly identify clearly which area we're talking about. So if you go up on the roof, you take a quick look at this roof, and in general, it appears to be, in good shape. If you don't do a whole lot of exploration, there isn't anything obvious that you see. There aren't any tears. There aren't any, I don't believe there's been roof leaks, at least that I'm aware of. There's some ponding you'll see from the photographs here, but that's not unusual, and we'll get into some of the specifics. But again, there wasn't anything that stood out, at least as far as damage to the roofing membrane itself. Okay. So we'll go on to looking at each individual. Well, before actually we go out there. So this is important. So here's some of the roof cuts we've done. This shows you on the right typical insulation. Okay, this is in the newer area. On the left is a test cut of what's referred to in the industry as phenolic insulation. So what's important to know about this is that phenolic insulation, which is, if you look at this diagram, everything you see in red has phenolic insulation. So clearly the majority of the building. This addition that was more recent doesn't have it. And some of these newer areas and this asphalt shingle roof. But literally the majority of the roof has it. So what's important to know about phenolic insulation is that it's basically a known item that creates rusting. It deteriorates metal decking. The good thing for this building is that from all the test cuts that we've done, we didn't see any evidence of any rusting. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't any. But what the test cuts that we've done, we didn't see any rusting of the metal deck. So that's the good news. And we think, well, there's two reasons why we believe that we haven't seen rusting. One is that there hasn't been a whole lot of, if any, roof leaks. Because if when the phenolic gets wet, that's when the problem occurs. The wet phenolic insulation has a chemical reaction with the metal decking, and that starts the corrosion problem. So there must not have been a whole lot of leaks, if any. And the other reason I think it's held up was because there was a vapor barrier installed between the insulation and the metal deck. So having said that, clearly this is something that, you know, needs to be removed, which would be removed anyway, but I just wanted to point out, we did find that. And again, the good news is that it has not caused, based on the cuts we've done, it has not caused any major damage to the metal deck, which is obviously a huge plus, because we've seen projects where this has caused substantial damage to the metal roof deck, and you can imagine the cost to repair. So now we'll look at each individual area. So the highlighted in yellow, what we refer to as roof area 1. This was an addition. I don't know the exact date of the addition, but clearly it's a newer wing. It has a modified bituminous roof on it. You could tell from this photographs. You could see the rolls of bituminous roofing. This is in, you know, pretty good shape. Doesn't have the phenolic, but again, it's such a small area in re-roofing the entire building. Certainly, we wouldn't want to leave that out because it's, you know, it could be 20 years old, it could be 15 years old. I'm not sure, but it should be replaced as part of the entire roof. The next area is R2 and R3, which you saw in the Google image, that these are the oldest roof areas. And these are the old built up membrane roof with the gravel. So these haven't been touched in over 30 years, apparently. So these certainly should be replaced. Okay. These areas are pretty much dead flat. There isn't really any tapered insulation. There isn't the structure of the roof that's sloped. It's pretty flat, which is not unusual, you know, for buildings of this age. The R1 area that we addition, that roof structure is actually pitched, has a slope to it. Okay. Now, then we'll go to the other areas. Are 6. This is an Epdm roof. This, I believe, this was repaired in the early 90s, replaced in the early 90s. Then you have the what we refer to as folded plate roofs. I'm sure you're all familiar with. These areas obviously are unique and have unique challenges. One of the important things that I want to point out on these is, if you look at, can you all see this image of the valleys?
Yes.
Okay, so I actually walked on part of this area myself on one of these, and what's happened over the years, the area must, well, the membrane must have shrunk a little bit, and it may not have been ever properly been adhered. But you can imagine walking on a hammock or on a trampoline or a tent. This area here was not adhered to the deck, so you could actually you could see that the rubber was just suspended. And you know, it's very fortunate that, you know, some heavy snow loads or somebody walking on it didn't puncture it. So those are major problem areas that certainly need to be addressed. There's some ponding here that we will look at. So those areas, this is common for every valley in these folded plate roofs. Certainly something that needs to be addressed. Again, in R10, same issue. R11 and R10 were also early 90s. Again, you have these valleys. This is the R11 roof. some skylights. Here you have significant ponding. And then you have the gymnasium, R12, which also has this sort of folded plate type roof. And you can see some ponding on here. This one was adhered a little bit better, wasn't as bad as the others. But again, it's at least 30 years old, needs to be replaced. There was some clogged gutters, but that's minor. Okay, and again, these were all in the early 90s. These were replaced with Epdm. And it's not in, the membrane itself is actually not in bad condition. Thank goodness, because there could have been major issues in those valleys, and there could have been major issues with that phenolic insulation. There's a few smaller areas. These may have been additions as well as numbers R16. And then the last one, I believe, is R16, which is an asphalt shingle roof, which again, it's such a small area that, we're doing this entire project. I would say to just go ahead and replace that asphalt shingle roof as part of, I think it's fairly old as well. There were some warped shingles, so I would recommend replacing that as well. Looking at the skylights, there's basically two areas that have skylights. In the center of this folded plate roof, there's a skylight, a large skylight here, and then on this one here. And then you have a few smaller skylights in these flat areas. Here's that pyramid-shaped skylight that's in the middle of those folded plate roofs. These are, some of these may even be original. Certainly I would consider, I would definitely want to replace these as part of the roof replacement. There's not a lot, so it's certainly worth the effort. So in summary, because of there's so many different geometries in this roof, all these angles and valleys, and we are proposing to utilize a 90 mil roof for those valleys and the folded plate, and then a reinforced 75 mil Epdm roof for the balance. And so when we look at this, when we consider the different types of systems, we look at cost of material, right? We look at availability, we look at cost of labor, and certainly, code requirements, the type of building it is, all of that, of course. So having said that, today, obviously labor costs are very high, and factoring in all the unique conditions of this roof, we are recommending a reinforced 75 mil for the majority of the roof, and a 90 mil, which is a thicker roof for the folded plate areas. And by default, this is going to give you a 30-year warranty. Now, I believe most of you are aware that the state doesn't reimburse you for that additional cost associated with the 30-year. But frankly, that's minimal. What's important is, I think we need to provide the right system for the building. If it happens to give us a 30-year warranty, so be it. But we have to, and I think we could justify that. And the reason for the reinforced 75 mil is because the actual labor to install it, we can actually do a fastened roofing system rather than a fully adhered, and the labor is less. So we're paying a little more for the material, but we're making up for it in the labor. Okay, at the end of the day, I believe we're looking at it quickly, the cost, the overall cost will be about the same, but we're getting a better product. So I believe it's a no-brainer, okay? And again, that's today, looking at all the different, looking at materials today, looking at cost of materials, lead time, looking at labor costs today. You know, when this gets designed, things may be different. But, and also, again, this is a draft, and when we put together the cost estimate, we're going to be getting more detailed cost information, and that may lead us into a different direction, possibly. So I just, again, I want to emphasize this is, you know, a work in progress, and it will, it may change as we continue through this. But you know, it's 90% there. So before I show you the tapered insulation plan, does anyone have any questions on this report?
Paul, just for some perspective, if I may,
Yes.
the first building was built in 1955. It was a 1/6 building in 1955. And then 57, they added the additional classrooms. And then all the plaques are hanging on the wall of all this construction. And then in the early mid-70s, I guess, they added all those 2 wings, I guess, and the gymnasium at that particular time. The cause of because that was the principle there in the 90s, was the water was gushing down on from the roof to the school for about 3 weeks before they decided to replace the roof. And then they did it back in the 90s, I guess.
Yes.
The addition of the TLC room may be the one you're talking about, which
This one
was
here?
roof over there. But
Yeah.
J. Ryan and Boothill are very similar, same contractor, same person who did the job. So what you find at Boothill, you're going to find at J. Ryan. So that it's an
Yeah.
old building. I understand the town is doing an assessment, supposedly from an outside firm on all the buildings. Now, do we have to wait for that assessment to be completed? I don't know. But I think we have to go ahead and replace the roof, at least at Boothill, start something. Because if you think back to 55, it was a 1/6 building. Then you decide, oh, it's not big enough. Then they added in 57 the additional rooms. And it was later on in the mid-70s, they decided to put the additional parts on it, make them all 21-room schools. The philosophy at that time, when Tash was school and Dad's farm was built. But another reason why the roof, the old portion, was there was quite a bit of vandalism going on. Kids were coming in weekends and getting ladders and jumping up on the roofs. So after the new building, a new roof was put on in the 90s, we had better security and there was no more walking up on the roof, and it was limited just to the head custodian to go up there, and nobody else was allowed on the roof. But you had to pretty much hit it on the way. But the reason they replaced it in the 90s was the entire old section of the building, the water was coming down the walls. And Dr. Yetman was the superintendent. When he walked over and saw it, he said, I think we should replace it. I said, I think so. But it's an old building, but we'll see what happens. It was a nice report. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions on the report itself?
I had a question. This Joanne Glasser-Orenson. I was just wondering, a lot of the problems with the roof seem to come from the design of the building, which I would think you want to maintain the design of the building, but was there an option to sort of reconfigure the design to the extent that we wouldn't have you know, those tent-like structures happening on the roof? Or
Well,
does your material just take care of that problem?
well, actually, the next diagram I will show you, we are proposing to do something that will alleviate that potential future, that same issue happening again in the future.
Thanks.
So I have a question. Somebody else have a question before me? Okay, so this report is predicated on keeping this steel deck, am I correct?
Yes,
Okay. So this is different from what we've proposed for the Middlebrook Elementary School.
in what sense?
Well, haven't we created a wooden structure in case we want to put solar panels at some point?
No.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, so if I could, I guess I'll move on to, I want to show you what referred to as a tapered plan. Okay, this is a drawing that is generated by the manufacturers of the insulation. Okay, so I'll zoom in on here. There's a base insulation. It's 5 inches, 2 layers of 2.5 inches. That gives you your minimum R30 of insulation that's required by code, okay? And then everything else on top of that is tapered. And that's to provide the proper slope that's required by code of 1/4 inch per foot, okay? That's very common to do because a lot of these older buildings, basically, the roof structure is dead flat. Unlike this area, the newer addition, this has a sloped deck, so there's no need for tapered insulation. Everywhere you see all these lines here, this is all tapered insulation. Again, not unusual, this is common. So what you see is, zooming in here, what's also nice about these buildings, most of this anyway, is that the drains are along the perimeter. What's good about that is that we don't have, unlike Middlebrook, where we had to introduce additional overflow drains internally in the building. In these cases, because the drains are on the perimeter, we can simply add scuppers, basically just small notches in the fascia. So if the main drains here get clogged, the water would simply flow out the scupper. Unlike if the drain was in the middle, we'd have to add another drain to get the water out. Okay, so that's the good news with the, so that's mainly these two larger areas. Obviously, these folded plate areas have plenty of roof slope. And then the gymnasium is also, the roof structure does pitch. But we're at, we still are adding some tapered insulation. With these, what you see, these are referred to as crickets. If you're familiar with the roofing industry. And what all this does is take the water away from the valleys. Okay, you create these crickets so that you don't have ponding. So that's what we're proposing there. Now, what we're proposing, the question earlier from Joanne about, we don't want this to occur again. What we're proposing is to build up these valleys. If you can see where I'm pointing, it says wood crickets. Okay. Basically, what we're proposing is to build up these areas with wood framing and plywood, to not have these just simple, valleys that we could have problems again in the future with the roofing. So why not do this with tapered insulation? Because it would be a lot of it. It would be a lot of tapered insulation. So rather than do it with tapered insulation, it would be less expensive to build it, basically frame it out of lumber with plywood, and then put the roofing over that. Okay, so that would eliminate any ponding. It will eliminate any future issues with the roofing, potentially delaminating and creating problems like it is today. Okay, any questions on that?
Well, would it look significantly different, or would it look pretty much the same?
Well, certainly not from the road or from the ground. From the roof level, trying let's see if I could explain it. Right now, you have a simple valley, which is
Yeah.
like a V shape, right? Comes to a point. So if you can imagine, snow and ice and water piles up in there. So what these crickets do is that it elevates the area in the center and then it slopes it to each end so that you don't have any sort of, just dead valleys. But, you certainly, we would not be able to see that from the ground at all.
Where would it drain off, Paul?
Well, one side would drain off into the center area like it does now, and then the other, small portion of it would drain off into, probably have to add, I don't recall, but we may have to add like a leader at each of these points, if you can see around, just to pick up a little bit of, this, any water flow here. But it would be a huge improvement to what is a challenging roof area. Is that clear for everyone?
Yes. Do other people have questions? Okay. Oh, I do have a question. Let me ask this. This is from Joy. She's having an issue with her mic. The question is, sorry, I lost it. What is actually the type of wood that would create the cricket? Is it plywood or is it something that is going to last longer?
Well, it would be, yeah, no, the surface, yeah, would be plywood. Plywood is, plywood is on many roofing systems. Your typical asphalt shingle roof is, the base material is plywood.
Right.
So it's not, it'll be, it'll have waterproof membrane. It'll have vapor barriers. It'll have the roof membrane itself. The plywood itself will be, pressure treated, exterior grade. It's not unusual to use it. I mean, wood is used for blocking of in the parapets of the edge conditions of, and it can be used, to on a limited basis for a building like this. You couldn't build the entire roof out of wood. That would not be allowed by code. Any other questions? Dave, are you good with that?
Yeah, I am. I like the idea of the wood crickets, to tell you the truth, Paul, because of that. It won't allow that so much stress to develop in the membrane as it shrinks and expands with temperature. So I kind of like this idea. I think it'd be much better supported, and I think we'll get better drainage. I believe there's already like not a scupper, but it's kind of a collector at the top of a leader at each one of those valleys right now.
Yeah, there may be. I don't recall.
Yeah, the rest of the, the rest of the roof is pretty straightforward, tapered flat roofing. So
Right.
looks good. I like the fact that you're proposing EPDM. I think it's a good material. I think it's one of the better ones for us service wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the go-to, the best, bang for your buck these days.
Yep.
So if I understand this correctly, basically you're creating pitch on the two large flat roof sections. or actually throughout the roof, you're creating some type of pitch through the insulation and then through the crickets. Is that correct?
Yeah, the tapered insulation, wherever you see all these lines, that's tapered insulation. For example, at Middlebrook, the majority of it was all tapered insulation. And again, that's very common for older school buildings like this, because they built them with dead flat roofs, pretty much.
Right.
But nowadays, when we build new buildings, we slope the structure, the deck.
So just to ask, I think you've answered this. Would we need additional drainage from the roof?
Thank you for reminding me. There are a few areas where we may want to add. We haven't fully looked at it closely yet, but like some of these areas where it's very tough. I mean, right now we're showing that, we can make it work with the drains we have, but we're going to take a closer look at it, once we get further into it.
Okay.
But
Well-
it'll be minimal if we do it. We may need to add one or two, perhaps here and here.
Paul, in the conditions where you have internal drains like that, you will come up with an overflow type system for a drain?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah. And again, on this building, it's minimal because there's
Yeah,
not
I got
that
that.
many internal
That's it.
drains.
that's a good thing.
Yes,
But we
it is.
do have a few here and there.
Right. Mhm.
There must be existing HVAC structures on top of the roof. Am I correct?
Yes, there are some. There's not a huge quantity.
Okay,
The photographs.
okay,
They're mainly exhaust fans. There are no rooftop cooling units on that building.
There's a
Okay.
couple rooftop units, I believe.
Maybe in the office
Yeah, very
area
few.
only.
Like here, there's a couple here.
Yeah, the
Okay.
office area, yeah.
all right.
Not a whole lot.
Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
here's a quick question. This is an assessment of the Boothill roof. Is that what Paul's doing for us?
yes, that is
Has
correct.
to be done? We haven't awarded the contract for this Boothill school yet, have we?
No, we have not.
So we're just getting a preliminary report on what it takes just as an assessment that Paul's talking about.
Correct.
Right. This will allow us to apply for the grant.
A
And in
grant.
addition, it will allow us to have a detailed report for the Board of Finance or the Town Council when we go for capital funding.
Yes.
And you'll have a
So-
budget as well.
Yeah.
So when do we've already awarded the Middlebrook roof, right? And it's working. Are we talking about something during this school year of putting Boothill in the same capacity for next summer? Or are we just postponing
No.
for another summer?
This would
I
be
think-
the following summer for Boothill.
Not next summer, but the following summer, hopefully.
Correct.
Dave, are you concerned about this assessment they're doing in all the buildings? Will this affect any of this work that we're doing as a committee?
You're muted.
David,
Yeah, I don't believe so. We're doing an overall condition assessment, which will probably, certainly cite that the roof needs replacement. We're doing several assessments right now. We're doing an overall district-wide master plan that includes facility condition assessments. That will also help us develop a strategy for capital planning. I don't, unless the master plan yields a plan to knock down a building and build a new building somewhere else, which again would have to be fully.
No, no $30 million new building. We're not going to build one
See,
now.
so I'm saying, that replacing the roof on the building is certainly not going to be wasted money if we keep
No.
the building. There may be additions added to certain buildings as a result of the district-wide master planning, but it's certainly not going to change the structures that significantly that we'd be throwing money away on the roof.
So what's the time frame going for putting out a contract to have the Boothill roof done? Not this summer coming, but the following. Do we have a timetable, Madam Chairman, on this, or?
Well, so the timetable is partially dictated by our town internal process. So we need to have certain resolutions. We need to go before, from the town council. And we need to be included in the capital plan with, a number for next year. And then once we have that, then we start the application process with the state. But as you can see, that's anything but speedy.
Oh.
And then once we get the approval from the state, then we can, solicit bids for the project. If I'm saying this incorrectly or I've left something out, someone please correct me.
Yeah,
But-
we would have to do a solicitation initially for an architectural firm to actually design the roof.
Yes.
This is a conceptual design that's going to allow us, to show that the roof needs replacement, what type of roof it, could be used. It's not entirely sealed that this is what will happen, but it allows us to show what we'd be doing, why we'd be doing it, and how much it would cost to do it, so that we can seek funding authorization from the town as well as apply for a grant for the state. But we have to have, as Pat just said, we'd have to have those resolutions. We'd have to have an approved grant prior to hiring an architect if we want the architectural fees to be part of the grant reimbursement.
So what's the cost for the assessment that Paul just did?
I believe we agreed on, there's an invoice in front of you, $6,600.
In total.
$6,600. Okay.
So Mike, let me try to explain this. We first have to get,
Yeah.
we have,
Kevin.
it was gonna get confusing with two roofs.
Yeah.
The bonding was already set for both roofs. That was in place when we did the bonding. So we were working on Middlebrook's roof. We went out, obviously, we used Paul as an on-call architect, which the state wants us to go out now to get an architect for the next roof. So we did the roof, we went out, we're ready to go. We said, no, let's get state reimbursement, went through a process, took a while, a bid came back, over budget. We need to concentrate on Middlebrook's roof, getting that from the state, what Dave is doing very soon, to get that out and awarded, because you keep saying contract. We have no contract for Middlebrooks. We need to get a bid back out on the street when we have the state approval money for the grant, because you guys want state money, 30-something%. You have to go out to bid within the next 2 to 3 months and have it back in and awarded to have that roof, Middlebrooks roof, done by next summer. In the meantime, we're also trying to do Boothill. So they hired Paul, which we agreed upon, at a certain assessment to do assessment. The assessment obviously is going to say, yes, we need to do the roof. We had the bonding. Now they have to go in front of the budget system again this year. And that hopefully that gets done in March or so. And hopefully the state is on board with that. We would have to go out for a RFP for an architect to put this together. That has to get awarded. Probably during this, middle next year, say summer. When that architect is ready, what Paul did on the first one, Middlebrooks, they would go out, we would go out, work with them, get a bid. But again, this time next year or September, to put a bid out for Boothill for the following year. It sounds like we have a lot of time, but we don't. we got to stick to, sticking with the state, getting them going. We need, if you want state money, you have to stay on top of it, and it just prolongs this longer. But we need to get concentrate back on this committee, back to Middlebrooks, and getting that back out to bid once the state says okay. And I think Dave's on top of it with the woman. Hopefully gets back.
You're on mute.
Kevin, you're muted.
Sorry, that wasted about 3 months waiting for that state to get back to us now for the extra money that we needed. I'm sorry I feel that way, but now they want one paper that Dave's working with a lady that we only need an R something form instead of a package. You can see what the state getting state money does. It's actually delaying and making it more costly for everything. I'm not gonna say this again, because I keep to myself, but Middlebrooks, we could have went out and got it done and been done already at a certain price, even with COVID. With no money, cheaper than we're gonna get it done. But not to hash on it, let's get Dave to get back to Middlebrooks. Let's get that out to bid before September, before October, in October. You do not want to get that out in January, February. We're gonna miss the summer again. And you'll be doing 2 roofs in 2024.
Hey, Kevin, didn't you say that we had to have this out to bid by September?
Yeah, September, October, we do. We told him we got to stick to the plan. We cannot wait, we just keep waiting another month. And to me, I'm impatient that way. And I know how the state is. I work with CHR, I work with state people up there, and Dave is on them like religiously, which is great for our side. But we need to get this lady to answer the question for the extra few $100,000 that we came over budget. I think the bids came in at 2.2 low. We're trying to go for 2.5. We really have to get that application signed off. And me and Paul, they need to get out with Dave, the Middlebrooks roof again. We have
If you don't get this off by October, you're looking at 2024 before you get that roof done.
Most likely, Tony. I don't want to say for sure, but reality, yes. People
Well, I
are
think what
locking
we
in.
have to focus on, excuse me, Kevin, I don't
Yeah,
mean to interrupt you, but what
that's
we
fine.
want to focus on, of course, is getting the response from the state on the Middlebrook Elementary School roof project so we can move forward. There's no question about that.
I agree.
How much money are we getting from the state if all the paperwork's done correctly?
A lot. It's 34% of the
34, yeah.
total project cost.
If Dan Martin's, I ain't tell you the exact number, but that's
And by waiting, how much money did the cost go up on it?
Well, last year costs were high too, Tony. I mean, this is like trying to shoot darts at a moving board.
Yeah, but Kevin's right. Kevin's right. We could have had this done by now. I know everybody wants to get 34%. I can go
But
back.
I
to
don't
I go back to the high school building committee, going back 15 years. The state still owes the town $1 million. We haven't gotten the money yet. And that was 15 years ago.
I
Is that
can't
right,
comment
Kevin?
on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
say
can.
I talked
I
to other
can.
towns. Other towns got when this first roof came up evaluation, and Paul knows about this, Lisi, is that a certain priority person came in and gave us roofs, cost for 3 roofs. And that roof was very high. And we really had a cost estimate from other architects, not only Paul, for like $1 million, $1.2 million for Middlebury.
Right.
But we stopped and said, hey, wait a minute. And I remember who it was. I remember the town council person said, hey, should we go out to state funding? And I'll be on record and say it, and I'll be the first to say, not if you wanted to get it done in that time frame. But we went for it. We missed it. The cost obviously did go up because of COVID, which is not to blame to anybody, but it did go up. And other roofs were accomplished at that time when we missed our boat. But we wanted, listen, we all agreed to that. We want to save money. We're even state money. We're going to pay more for this roof than we originally probably could have done it for, without a committee, without anything. I'm just being honest. So if we're going to go forward with this, please, let's try to get the state now to lock in so we can get this one done for next summer. That's all I'm asking for Middlebrooks, because I need to get the bid out, in sometime in October. I think Paul knows this. We have to go through drawings, prevailing wages we have to still get. There's new stuff we have to update when we go out to bid. I want to lock a vendor in before they all get locked in for next summer. And then
prevailing wages is because you're using the state's money, correct, Kevin?
over 100,000, yeah. But yeah, they change every, almost every 2 weeks.
Okay.
But, like I said, I really like to concentrate. I think Paul did an excellent job on the assessment. I definitely think you need a roof at Boothill. A lot of roofs probably, but thank God Dave has no repair work on it major. But I think we should try to concentrate somehow on getting Middlebrooks out in the next 2 months.
I do
That's
have
my
repairs. I have constant repairs at Boothill, believe me.
Okay,
I think
so
we
what I'd
spent
like,
over $8,000 last year for repairs.
okay, so I'd like to bring us back to where we were. We've heard this report. People have asked questions. Paul, do you have any final comments you'd like to make about this report on the Boothill Elementary School project, roof project?
No, I think I pretty much touched on everything.
Okay. Are there any other further comments from members of the committee? If not, I'd like to ask for a motion for us to accept this report.
I'll make the motion, Madam Chair, to accept the report.
Thank you, Joanne. And can I have a second? Joy Cologne seconds. Can we pass this by unanimous consent, or do I need to do a roll call? I don't hear anything, so I believe that means that we can pass this by unanimous consent. Okay, everybody, thank you. All right. The final, actually, not the final item, but almost final item is we've received the invoice. Well, first I should thank Paul for all the work on this and the comprehensive report. I think it was very helpful. Certainly answered questions that I had. But the next item would be for us to approve the invoice that Antonazzi Associates submitted for the Trumbull Boothill roof assessment. And that amount on this bill is for invoices $5,280. The total contract amount that we had approved is $6,600. So could I have a motion for from someone to approve this invoice?
I'll make the motion to approve the invoice.
Okay, thank you, Joanne.
Associates.
Thank you very much. Could I get a second?
Lynn Salt, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this seconded motion? Okay, can we pass this by unanimous consent? Okay, being quiet, I assume that means that we can. Okay, this motion is passed by unanimous consent.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you. And thank you again, Paul. The next item really on our agenda is when we would meet again.
1 second, Pat,
Yes,
will you sign that invoice and send it to Dan?
yes, I will. I'll drop
Okay.
it off at the office tomorrow morning.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Our next meeting date. Two things will drive the meeting date. One, I believe, is getting the approval from the state. And the other thing that we have coming up is the report from the asbestos assessment company. Dave Cody, do we have any information on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of confess here that it fell off my radar and I didn't get the purchase order requisitioned for on time. I noticed in the financials that it has been issued to Eagle Environmental. So I will follow up with them in the morning to make sure they've got that on their schedule to get over there. They're gonna do some similar type roof cuts and then do some sampling of the materials to see whether we have any asbestos to deal with.
Okay.
So by
So-
next meeting, we should have those results. I should be able to report on that.
So should we've been meeting about every month. Should we say 4 weeks? Wednesday, 4 weeks from now, let me go. count. That would be September 21st for our next meeting, a Wednesday. It would be at 7:30. Is that okay for everybody? Does anyone have a problem with that?
Nope.
Okay, our next meeting date. Obviously, if we don't have information, we don't have something to act upon, we can always cancel the meeting, but let's get it on the calendar. Okay. Does anyone have any other information that they'd like to share?
So Dave, you're gonna talk to that lady now until September. So if you get information from her, or if we're ready to go, will you email Pat and the committee? Because then we'll know we'll have the information.
Oh, definitely. I've been keeping Pat abreast of everything I hear from her, but
All right.
it hasn't been very productive yet, but I'm gonna continue to bother her.
And I guess in theory, if you get information sooner, we can also meet sooner, provided we can make sure we have a quorum at the meeting. So I'm open to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, one of my questions to her, since we've already gone through a PCR and they're not treating it as a new application for a grant, I think we're gonna be able to just, once the grant funding has been approved, we're gonna be able to just go right to bid with it. We won't need to go through a review again.
That would be
Nothing has
really
changed,
important.
Yeah,
Open that.
I think they will require some review again, unfortunately.
Job security, right, Paul?
They
I was
said
gonna say
it,
justifying their existence, but,
Yes.
unfortunately, yeah.
all right.
That whole department up there is under turmoil with the investigations and all that sort of thing. So it's going to be a crapshoot for Dave to get a hold of her. From our side of it, the finance side, we can never get her to respond back to our requests for information.
That's awful.
It's terrible.
I think she knows my phone number now, so she's not answering.
It just goes into space when you try to get up there, talk to those folks. Not good.
I don't believe any of them are working in an office yet. I think
No.
they're all still working from home.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, I think the next thing would be a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I just received a message that Mr. Ward, his computer died.
Okay.
And he doesn't have the laptop cord, so, but it sounds
Okay.
like you guys might be finished up soon, so.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're
Yeah, he
ready to wrap
Just
it up.
wanted to let you know, he didn't just bail on you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion from someone? Thank you, Joanne.
make-
Glassstein. Do I need a second on that? Probably I do. Joy Cologne, thank you. All those in favor? Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, good night, everyone.
Thanks
Good
very
night.
much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Barbara. Thank you.
Pat, I have a conflict on the 21st. This is Cindy, and but you
Yes.
don't need me. You don't need me for a meeting.
Okay,
So I
All
won't
right.
be there.
all right. Well, I hope it's a fun conflict.
Yeah, it is. So,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
just
Thank you
thought
for
I'd
letting me
mention that.
know. Thanks for